Hey, this is Seagrove, and I am recording a conversation with Connor Lavelle about a deck that we have both enjoyed and seen different levels of success with. His a bit higher than mine, and that deck is Decidueye Zoroark. So, Connor, why don't you tell everybody about your experience with it?
So I just played it at a League Cup. I got first place. That was cool. But I don't know. I picked the deck up a couple of weeks ago, I guess, like right after London. And I liked it then, but I didn't. I don't know. I wasn't succeeding that much with it. I think it was probably like I probably played 30 or 40 games with the deck before I really started to like win consistently.
Okay.
So I took a lot of losses in the lead up to that, and I was like really questioning whether the deck was viable because it was so unreliable for me as far as like being able to win.
Okay. And then you won that League Cup. So my experience was sort of the opposite, where I was one of the earlier people on the deck, and I guess other people made it at similar times or secretly before me, but we're keeping it hidden. And then took it on a run on PTCGO, 24 wins, which obviously is PTCGO, but that at least shows it's consistent and a good list, I think. But then I started losing with it a lot. So I started changing things up, trying out other people's lists and all these things, trying to get it more and more consistent. And I started having the same questions, like, is this a viable deck? And I eventually decided I didn't really think it was very good and ended up taking Golisopod Garbodor to my League Cup. Golisopod Zoroark to my League Cup instead last minute after putting like 150 games on Decidueye. So here's some of the changes I made, and I was wondering if you could speak to maybe why I was having issues. So my biggest fear was I felt like the deck had a lot of trouble if it went second or if it missed turn one Bridget. And
Yeah.
so,
So
go ahead.
I definitely see where your concern is coming from. A lot of the time, so the deck will totally change course depending on how fast you get set up.
Okay.
So in a lot of matchups, especially if you go first, you're going to lead with a Zoroark GX. You're going to deal a bunch of damage with Riotous Beating, and you're going to either keep pace about even or pull ahead from the get-go. And then once you have your Decidueyes up, you're going to really take a pretty firm grip on the game from there. If
Okay.
you do get a slower start, then you usually have to pivot back to something that is more stick a Decidueye active for a little bit, max potion it off, kind of stall the game out as you get set up. Or and then you can devolve from there. You can spread with Coco because you are too far behind in prizes to reliably be able to take the trades with Zoroark GX that you normally would be
Right.
happy to get.
Okay, well, it sounds like I had. Okay, well, I can probably answer my own question now just from that. Thank you. But I'll go ahead and say it. So I got to the point where I was like, I have to get Bridget turn one. I went up to 4 Bridget, and I felt like the deck is not consistent enough, that's why I was losing. So I just put in consistency. I ended up cutting Coco and Espeon back out of the deck, and it sounds like
And
I sort of took away my contingency plan for bad starts.
yeah, yeah. Without Espeon and Tapu Koko, your game plan again, especially if you get a slower start, like you really don't have one. There's no fallback, and it removes a lot of win conditions from a lot of different matchups, especially ones that use, especially like the Golisopod Zoroark, Gardevoir, Metagross, all these decks that you can really lower the HP total of by using Espeon.
Yeah. Okay, well, that answers that question. So, cool. Then I wanted to ask you. Oh, by the way, I picked up your list once you posted it, and I haven't gotten a chance to lose with it yet. I've only played like 6 games, but it's going a lot better. And I'm feeling much better about the deck.
That's good.
Yeah. So, anyways, going into a few matchups, you mentioned two of the three I wanted to talk about, or two of the four, I guess. So the first one I wanted to ask you about was Guardy. What is your general plan for Gardevoir?
So Gardevoir is a really weird matchup because if you play it like you would just about any other matchup, you're gonna lose.
Okay.
Because if you set up multiple Zoroark GX, if you set up more than one, then their Gallade is going to be able to take so many prizes that you're not going to be able to keep up. So what you have to do is you set up one Zoroark GX max. I really try to get it out on like that second turn so that you can take advantage of it for the longest before it does get hit with that sensitive blade, so you can draw a lot of cards, so you can put a lot of early pressure on.
Okay.
And then by the time your Zoroark does get knocked out, ideally you've got a Decidueye, maybe a couple of Decidueyes, and then you're going to fall back on your primary game plan, which is to get Coco Spread, get Espeon, and then devolve your opponent's board down and knock their Pokemon out that way.
Okay. So you are attacking with that Zoroark right off the bat like normal. Maybe trying to take out a couple Ralts and stuff like that.
I do try to use Zoroark GX in the early game, especially if I can get a lead on them.
Yeah.
I'll usually set one up regardless, even if it never leaves the bench, just because the early draw from trade is really important to set up your board. Yeah, they can Guzma it, and usually they will, but the setup that it gives you is really what you want it there for at the very least.
Okay, cool.
But overall, like in that matchup, you use a lot of fringe attackers. Like whether you play Zoroark BKT or Mewtwo Evo, you're going to use either of them a lot of the time. You're going to use Tapu Lele GX. You're going to use Tapu Koko. Your Rescue Stretcher is definitely your friend in like reusing one of attackers. And between those and Feather Arrow, you're going to try to get it so you can Miraculous Shine for a couple of prizes. Something that a lot of players do is they try to set up their opponent's entire board to be knocked out at once with Miraculous Shine. You don't always have to do that. As long as you can remove your opponent's largest threats from the board with it, then you can take a couple of turns to devolve everything. It doesn't have to happen all at once.
Okay.
But you definitely need to keep in mind that they are playing heavy Max Potion. So your Feather Arrows really need to be well thought out in the sense of you need to be playing around that Max Potion. You can't put yourself in a situation where they can play one Max Potion and then set you back several turns.
Right. Okay. Well then, let me ask you about another matchup, and that's obviously the number 2 deck right now, which is Zoroark Golisopod. How do you approach that?
That matchup is interesting because that really falls back to how fast of a start you got. If you're about even with them, or if you're ahead, then a lot of the time what will be your game plan is to take favorable trades with Zoroark GX, because a Choice Banded Riotous Beating with a full bench and 3 Feather Arrows deals 210, so you can take knockouts on their attackers, and then you can use Max Potion to keep ahead on the prize exchange so they can't really get anything back.
Okay.
If you start off slower, then you're going to go for a devolve strategy like you would Gardevoir. Because their basics have 60 and 70 HP, a lot of the time you're going to be able to get several prizes off Miraculous Shine at once. In general, when you do have to fall back on a game plan like that, you want to target out those Zoroarks first, not only because the Zorua has less health, but also because it is their draw. So if you can shut their draw off, then their ability to keep up with resources is going to be a lot worse, and then that'll usually buy you some time to either progress your board to where you can take trades, or to finish off your spread play and devolve the rest of their Pokemon.
Okay, cool. I was going to ask you also about Vikabulu, because I saw you played that, and one did very well at the League Cup here recently. What's that matchup like?
I did play Vikabulu. I did pretty poorly.
I saw. But did you have any thoughts on the matchup afterwards, or during, or before even?
Yeah, definitely. So Vikabulu is a deck that I really wanted to be good and a deck that I'm still kind of trying to make good, but it
Same.
definitely does not have a good Decidueye Zoroark matchup. Their Tapu Bulus are very easy to knock out with Zoroark GX and Decidueye. They have no way to knock out a Decidueye GX. Even if they're playing Tapu Koko promo, it's extremely unlikely for you to have 5 energy in play at a time just because you run so few.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time what ends up happening in that matchup, at least for me, is you just get ahead. Your Zoroark GX starts taking prizes early on, and you're able to trade favorably into their Bulu, and if they miss a choice band once, then their game is over. Alternatively, you can go for the devolution strategy once again, especially if you're playing against a Tapu Bulu Vikavolt where they don't play any Charge Bug, because you can run them out of rare candies.
Right.
This play I don't like it as much.
Yeah.
I usually like to be more aggressive in this matchup, but sometimes it does happen, and you definitely can play for the devolution strategy, especially because they don't typically play any healing in that deck. So if you place damage, it's going to stick.
Okay.
So just keep that in mind. You don't have to worry quite as much about that max potion, that Acerola coming in play if you're attacking those, or if you're feather arrowing those Vikavolts, because they're not going to be able to get rid of the damage.
Okay. Well, those were the 3 I wanted to ask about, but while I was saying it, I thought of one more I wanted to ask you about, and that's Buzzswole. I've had a lot of trouble against Buzzswole just with, like, if I start Zorua and then they get a knockout on my Zorua and 30 on a Rowlet, and then they're able to Guzma another Zorua and take a knockout on that and knock out a Rowlet. Am I doing that wrong? Is the matchup just bad? Talk to me about that matchup.
So that matchup is rough. It depends on what techs you're playing. So if it is against Buzzwole Zoroark, because I see 2 variants of the deck pretty commonly. I see Buzzwole Zoroark and I see Buzzwole Lycanroc.
Yeah.
Buzzwole Zoroark I find to be much more difficult than Buzzwole Lycanroc.
Okay.
Just because they have so much healing. It's really hard. You have to one-shot their Buzzwoles. Or else they're just going to keep on spreading, and eventually you're going to get paced out of the game. But your game plan against those decks, Zoroark GX is not a terrible Pokemon to use just because most of the time they are not one-shotting it.
Right.
They need to commit quite a few energy to a Buzzwole to knock out a Zoroark GX. Mewtwo Evo is huge against Buzzwole because it has 130 health, which is really awkward for a Buzzwole to knock out. But it deals a lot of damage because it hits for weakness, it attacks for only a double colorless. So if you're able to stick a Mewtwo Evo active, you don't even need to get any Zoroark GXs in play necessarily because you can use your Decidueye to supplement the Mewtwo's damage. You can keep your max potions coming down on the Mewtwo. It really swings that matchup.
Okay. Speaking of, I've seen a lot of people go back and forth on Mewtwo Evo, Zoroark, and I've seen yourself do it too. Which one
Yes,
should we
I have
play?
done it. So I think it is really dependent on your metagame. If you don't expect Buzzwole, then I think that Zoroark BKT is more useful in just about every other matchup.
Okay.
But if you do expect Buzzwole, or even if you expect like Buzzwole and Gardevoir, Mewtwo Evo is it's okay against Gardevoir. Then you can switch out from Mewtwo Evo because it is so much stronger in those matchups in general. So if you were taking it, like let's say you want to play it from Memphis, then I would play the Mewtwo because the Buzzwole matchup is your worst, and I think it's not necessarily going to be the most popular deck, but it will definitely be present.
Right.
So you want to have an answer for it. Without the Mewtwo, your matchup against Buzzwole is so much worse than it is with Mewtwo. It's a really drastic swing. So in a local meta, if you don't expect Buzzwole, then I would play the Zoroark Breakthrough. If you do expect Buzzwole, then I would play Mewtwo.
Okay, great. Well, I think that's about it, unless you have any mirror thoughts.
Mirror thoughts, my advice is to go first and draw better.
All right.
Those are usually things that help you in the mirror. Other than that, Devolution is really, really strong in the mirror match.
Okay.
You do have max potions to go off of, so if you get a really fast start, then you can tempo them out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
But it is very likely going to end up, each of you is trying to set up devolution plays, and the one who uses their max potions the best is going to be the one who wins.
Okay.
I tend to favor evolving up through Dartrix as opposed to Rare Candy in the mirror match, because they are going to be looking for that angle, and it does force them to take another turn of dealing damage to devolve you.
Okay.
But I mean, really, it comes down to who draws better a lot of the time. There's not a whole lot going on other than that.
All right, and last thing before we go, you had some big news that I thought you might want to share.
Oh yeah, so I have joined the writing staff for Someone's PC. I'm super excited for that. I have also joined the writing staff for PokeBeach. So my first article there is going to come out around the middle of the month. Someone's PC, I will have an article out this month. Not 100% sure when exactly that will be. But I would definitely appreciate anyone going and checking out my articles there. I'm really excited that they've both brought me on to be a writer for them. And I'm really excited to be able to provide content that hopefully everyone will be looking forward to read.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good day.
You too.